Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Bala's podcast. I'm your host, Bala, and thank you guys for tuning in from wherever you are in the world. New listeners, return listeners, thank you guys for always showing up for yourself. How many of you have heard the term mindset? When it comes to personal development, that word is used so commonly all the time, right? People talk about it like it's just another everyday word. Mindset, abundant mindset, poor mindset, broke mindset. But if you take the word and you break it up, what do you have? It's not just mindset, it's the mind is set, which means you have a fixated, concrete, you have your one way of looking at something. Your mind is set in a very specific way. Mindset. And so much of what it is in the world of personal development or in general is people talk about mindset like it's a on off switch. You just have to change your mindset. It's like the click of a switch, it can go on or turn it off, right? On would probably be you can have an abundant mindset or a rich mindset or a wealthy mindset or a positive mindset. But then it's like if the opposite is it's negative, it's poor, it's broke, it's pessimistic, it's completely opposite. So I've heard of these terms, as many of you probably have, so much. And it made me wonder, what is this idea of mindset? Which, again, if you break the word down, look how it is. Your mind is set, essentially. It is set in what it knows, what it was maybe told to believe, what it heard, what you grew up experiencing, how you grew up. It is set in a certain position, in a however you would classify that, right? It's set in stone. That's it. You can never change that. Your mind is set forever. But there's also a difference when you think about the terms broke and poor. Because when your mind is set, it can also dictate how everything else follows. And a lot of what follows that is the idea of having a broke or poor mindset. But then how do we distinguish broke and poor mindset? Broke is like walking around saying, hey, I have $1 in my checking account, I have $1 in my wallet, I'm broke, I don't have a lot. Broke is I have almost nothing, essentially. I'm walking around broke. But are you a broke person, or are you broke in the sense of I just don't have a lot comparing to that person? Now someone could say, hey, I'm broke, I only make, let's say, 5,000 a month, versus someone else is like saying, no, I'm broke because I only make 2,000 a month. Just throwing numbers out there. So it's a different terminology, or more like way of looking at it, of what it one's definition of broke to someone else's maybe the definition of, wow, you have way more than I do, you're a lot richer than I am, you have more wealth than I do. But then if you think about it, people also have said, growing up, people don't say growing up I was broke. Not necessarily. I think it's more people will say I grew up poor. What is the definition of growing up poor? Having nothing, no car, no income, no job, no resources to education, and no family, really. What is the definition of I grew up poor? Poor in what sense? And I know that a lot of times coaches always paint the before and picture or an after picture to show I used to be poor, but now I'm not because now I have this. However, even if you're using that in the story way of painting the before and after picture to others, so they can see what that person individually did to change it, you're still carrying that story of I was once poor, but now I'm not. So we still hang on to that story. We still hang on to that because it's almost like you have to use that to show the shift that was made, the transformation of what I did to get out of that. That's the, hey, I went from this poor to not poor. But if you think about the terms also between broke and poor, one really is more of an identity base. It is a reflection of us as the person, versus the other can be more economically based. To say I'm broke is I don't have anything in my bank account. To say that I'm poor is almost a declaration of I have nothing, I'm almost homeless, I'm at the bottom of the barrel here. But again, we have to look at the definitions between the two. Okay, but how do we define this for us? Because someone else might look at us and say, you have a lot more than I do, like a lot more. But also, someone can have millions of dollars and have a mixture of a poor mindset and a broke mindset, because someone who can have a lot of wealth can act like they have nothing, right? Because they grew up having nothing, so that kind of sticks with them. They maybe still have that perception of, even though I have a lot in my bank account, I treat myself like I have nothing. So it still doesn't necessarily mean just because you have more in your bank account means you haven't shifted that identity for yourself. Versus someone who's, again, poor, or to say doesn't have a whole lot, can say, you know what? I actually have an abundant mindset because I have a lot to be grateful for. I may not have millions. I may not have own my own home and have equity and all these abundant things, but I have a roof over my head. I have a job to go to. I have food in the fridge. I have the basic necessities. That can be considered an abundant, wealthy mindset. So I think it's important to always distinguish how we look at a broke mindset and a poor mindset, and realize that when we're attaching mindset to it, it is your mind is set specifically on that word and how that word is integrated into your life. And I hope some of this is making sense, because again, I've heard that term mindset so much. And it sometimes is talked about in a way where it's like, oh, can I just turn this switch on and off? Is that all it takes? Or how do I have an abundant mindset, right? How is it that people will say all it is a mindset thing? If you change it, you'll be better. Maybe the way that, if you think about it, again, it's a perspective. You have to shift your perspective. You have to shift how you see yourself, the world, the story you still carry, and say, okay, maybe I didn't grow up with a lot, but now what do I have? That alone can be the shift of I did not have that, but now I have a lot more. I grew up not having a lot in my family, but what we had was the basic necessities. Now I have more. I have what others would consider a beautiful apartment. Oh my God, this is awesome. It's spacious, it's big, you have so much sunlight that comes in here. And a long time ago, I also kind of realized, if you look at what the rest of the world does and doesn't have, what percentage, or what's the compared to what the rest of the world has, doesn't have, you have so much more that you could be classified to be in the top 10%, because there's countries out there that don't have clean water. They don't have access to toilets. They don't have access to a bed, basic necessities. But then we look at what we have and we're like, I'm technically broke because I only have $100 in my bank account, or not even 500, or whatever it could be. But if you compare, and again, this is where I am going to say, people will say, don't compare yourself, but look at someone else's life and look at what you have. You're not necessarily comparing, but you're also distinguishing. I actually have a lot more than someone else. I do put myself in this category. So I think broke is more of a economic standpoint, You're broke, you don't have a lot financially, and perhaps poor is a poor mindset, because think about that word, how we can use that word. A poor mindset means you don't think in your mind of all that you have, the greatness that you have in your life. Your mind, your poor mindset, the poor way of looking at it is, I'm still where I was once, and that's not changing. Of course, in a way, both words can be defined as that, can be in the same of mixture of economically and also an identity aspect, the story we carry. But I want you to really just think of it for yourself and realize that it's not always that I'm just going to turn the switch on and off, right? Because again, people will say, oh, in order to have a abundant rich mindset, you got to just do this and this. And everyone's going to have a different version of it. I'm definitely not the first person to talk about this. But I want you to realize that what is really, when you say the words poor and broke, and those are two very different words that can almost be classified as the same thing, and also looked at as what I have in my wallet, in my bank account, as an asset, versus what my perception, what my mind is thinking, what my story is, and how it connects to my identity. And ask yourself, am I really poor? Am I really broke? But then how often do I use those words? I've heard many people use those words. I grew up poor, I'm poor, I'm poor, I'm broke. And sometimes that's used when say, okay, the job you have doesn't pay you, but every 2 weeks, hey, I'm broke till Friday. I'm broke. I have no money in my bank account until my paycheck lands Friday. I'm broke until then. Poor almost sounds like a much more, to say, lower tier than broke. I am poor. Think of that word. I am poor. I have, it's just like to say I have nothing in my life. But do you really have nothing in your life? And again, as I've said multiple times, when you think of the word mindset, think of what that word actually is. Your mind is set to a specific, like the thermostat, it's set to a specific temperature, but it can be changed. And when that temperature is changed in your apartment, your house, the whole inside of that infrastructure, of that structure, changes. It can be very hot, it can be very cold, it can be very comfortable. That thermostat changes. That's what that is. That is the mind that is set. You're setting that thermostat, you're setting that gauge to a specific level, to a specific number. So, anyways, these are food for thoughts. And see how it applies in your life. How have you used those words? How do you look at those words? What do they mean to you? How do you feel when you hear those words by other people, when you say them, if you say them to yourself? So keep coming back every week, guys, and learning something new. And again, give yourself always a round of applause for showing up for yourself, for tuning in, and learning something new every week. And I'll catch you guys next week. Have a good one.